Welcome to a Friday edition of Beyond the Arc. I'm John Gonzalez alongside our NBA insider, Bill Ryder. And Bill, we did it. The finals are set. They are upon us. Are you excited?
You know what, John? I call me Stephen A. I'm excited and I'm excited for a weekend to just chill. But I know you wanted this thing to extend. I want that Luka Doncic we saw in the finals. I'm glad that we're here. I wish we could move the dates up from next Thursday. But yeah, man, I'm ready. I'm ready for some finals action. I'm glad Dallas won that thing.
Yeah, I misspoke. I said that they're upon us. They're not upon us until Thursday. So we do have this little dead period, which is why I wanted to see it extended, because more basketball is good for content, but you'll get a little rest period. Ashley will get a little rest period over the weekend, and then we'll come back rejuvenated and ready to go for Thursday's final. But we're going to get into the preview later in the show. We'll talk about the Celtics and what they've been up to. And I don't know if you heard what Joe Mazzulla said about how the Celtics are using their time off, but it was very Joe Mazzulla-esque. We'll run that past you. We'll preview the finals. But first, as you mentioned, the Wolves and the Mavericks series is over. The Mavericks stomped the Wolves in Game 5, 123-104 to win that series 4-1. It was a blowout, Bill. First, 4 games were separated by 18 points. And then this one, they win by 21. Luka was unbelievable.
Oh, my God.
I mean, he outscored the Wolves all by himself in the first quarter, and then just, steamrolled his way to 36, 10, and 5. He was so good.
Yeah, I mean, it was hard to focus on that game since Luka Doncic ended it in the first quarter. And obviously Kyrie piled on a bunch of points afterwards. A good sign for Dallas. Look, we already knew that they could play really close games and win really close games. That feels like that's mostly what they've done in the 12 wins that have gotten them here to the brink of the finals that start in 38 days. But I mean, Luka Doncic's ability to just come out, be frustrated from that Game 3. I think missing that free throw at the end of, Game 4, where he had the chance of that 4-point play and that look on his face, it almost felt like he carried over that frustration a few days and into Minneapolis. Yeah, he was, I don't even have the superlatives or the words. The guy was absolutely mesmerizing and magical. And what a freaking performance.
Yeah, not surprisingly, he wins the Western Conference Finals MVP. He has 45 playoff games, Bill, in his career. 25 of those he's gone for 30 or more. Just unbelievable. You mentioned Kyrie. He won for 36, 4, and 5. They have 4 games in these playoffs where both of them have scored 30 or more. 3 of those were in the Western Conference Finals. They really, it was a close series, but those 2 guys really acquitted themselves extremely well. I was wondering what you made of Luka when he accepted the Western Conference Finals MVP, because they're in Minnesota, and bless Wolves fans, some of them stuck around to boo him, and most people would just ignore it or whatever. He loved it. He was encouraging them to boo him as he was getting his award. I can't think of another player who would lean into it as much as Luka leans into being the villain in that scenario.
It fires him up. So I'm sure you saw this. There was the fan who was near courtside who had told Luka some version of "you've been crying," and in not safe for language at work and or CBS Sports' brand, Luka said, "Who's bleeping crying now?" or whatever. I mean, yeah, dude. I like his heel turn, or not even a heel turn. It's who he is.
Yeah. He likes to trash talk. I mean, how many pictures have we seen of him eyeballing Devin Booker, eyeballing Rudy Gobert, getting into it a little bit with Ant, who, is kind of similar in that way.
With Snoop. I mean, Snoop's sitting there courtside. Yeah. It's funny because when he does it with the officials, I find it grating and off-putting. It's like, bro, just stop freaking complaining and play. But it's his personality. Maybe we all need to chill, that this is just, he is going to go at whoever he feels like is in his way, fair or not fair. He's going to talk crap, and he's going to be pissed off if he's not winning or getting what he wants. It's good for it's good for him.
It's unbelievable for him. And, you and I and Ashley on the show have talked quite a bit this season about Luka and what his ceiling is and where he fits, not just in the hierarchy of, great players in the NBA right now, but, whether or not you can quote unquote win with him, and all of that is put to bed. Right now,
is it? I'll disagree.
Absolutely.
I don't know. It should be, but what is in the public domain and what should be are totally different things. If they lose to the Celtics in 5, people forget, John. I don't know, man. I'm with you. For you and me, maybe.
That way. I totally do, because this is 2 out of 3 the last 3 years that they've made the Western Conference Finals. Now he's also made it to a finals. And yeah, they're the underdogs, no doubt about it, in Boston. But the season that they've had right now, I don't know how you could look at this and go, oh, I'm not sure if Luka's a winning player, if you can build a
People
winner
still
around
say
Luka.
Karl
They've done
Malone
it.
isn't a winning player. Karl Malone made 2, and
Well,
could be.
that's madness.
You
Who are
got
those people?
you got everybody. What do you mean it's madness? That is absolutely the view. In fact,
Well,
if you did
he
your
ran into
top,
Michael Jordan.
I know people don't remember with any nuance history. I'm not disagreeing with your premise. It should be that way. Look, I think he's going to win a championship eventually. But I think if Boston beats him, people will not remember Luka the way they should. That's just how human nature works.
Maybe. I mean, then with those people though, like that makes me feel like it would be the hot take community, like the
I
Stephen
know you
A's of the
love to do that. I
world.
don't think. Do you like? I just think the casual fan is just gonna be like, oh, he didn't win
Maybe the
one.
casual fan. Maybe the casual fan. I don't know. I just think there's nuance to this thing, and like he's been so good this year. I mean, he was a top 5 MVP candidate.
He's
I think
amazing.
he finished third, right? Behind SGA. Yeah, he did.
Yes.
And post trade deadline, especially to see how this team was just a rocket ship, and also from last year when they missed, being in the play-in, they tanked their way out of the play-in in order to get a better draft pick, which he wasn't excited about. I mean,
You're right.
if anything, like at the very least, his drive to win, I think, has been on full display this season.
Dude, look, we're in agreement. I just don't think he'll get the credit he deserves. But to your point, if he does win, if they do beat Boston, he has as many rings as Joker. He has as many rings as Giannis. He has one more ring than Embiid. And I'm curious how you view it. I view those guys as his contemporaries, right? Sort of the post, or at least past the transition of Steph and LeBron, pre whenever the hell he shows up and starts winning these things, which he will, Wemby. But Luka's younger than those guys. Luka's 3, 4, what is he, 25? He's
25.
Yeah, so he's got the opportunity. He's 3, 4, 5 years younger than those dudes. He's got the opportunity to have the same number of rings and a lot more runway, to your point about legacy, to get, to get ahead of guys who you win a ring and all of a sudden you're the next big thing. I mean, Joker was the next big thing, and I'm not counting him out. I think there's every reason to believe that Nikola can win more rings. I know it's one season, right? Guys lose and they come back and win, but you're right. What it does for Luka and his legacy is, for me at least, if they win in the finals, it's huge. These things are hard to win.
One of my friends, one of my Boston buddies who's a Celtics fan, was sort of wondering about this on our text chain. So I told him I'd run it past you, but do you think Luka comes in as an MVP favorite for next season now?
Oh yeah, I do. That's a great question. Yeah, I think so, because I voted SGA 2 and Luka 3.
Yeah, I would have as well.
It's the right call, but when you were just reminding all of us that was it, a part of me was like, oh, like maybe I got it wrong. But it's regular season. That's how that works. And
I thought that was the right call.
Yeah, but I do think the power of narrative is really strong. I know it's strong in what voters do, and like you're really sort of focused on hot takeism in the NBA, and it's a real thing. I'm focused on group thinkism, which I think is also a real thing, and I think so many NBA voters and writers and media people are so worried about what their buddies are going to say on NBA Twitter, what everyone thinks, that there's this sort of like, when there's a sort of general push in a direction, I think it matters significantly. Yes. I think Doncic, assuming Dallas has a really good, the other thing is they've been amazing since March. And so if they, finish first or second or third in the West, that's a huge boost too.
Since early February, even going back just to slightly before the trade deadline, after the trade deadline, they had that a little bit of a stumble. But since the beginning of February, basically the two best teams in the NBA are the two best teams that are facing each other in the finals right now. Yeah. So it's been a remarkable stretch for the Dallas Mavericks. We're going to get into, previewing the finals, and I have a bunch of questions and stuff for you. Should we do a little Wolves obit here?
Yeah, we should. I feel bad. Don't you? I like the Wolves. Even in their lose.
They were incredibly fun to watch this year. I'm glad that you came around to, enjoying the Wolves perspective.
Well, it was hard after I lost that bet to you. That was the big hurdle for me. Once
you broke through that hurdle, you were like, wait a minute, this is a fun team. They're extremely good defensively. Ant is an ascendant star. Cat, I thought, post injury looked really good. But this series was a tough series for them, right? They didn't defensively. They had one game that was up to their standards, and that was the game 4 that they won. Other than that, they didn't look as good as they had in the first 2 series against the Suns and the Nuggets. And, I think that they'll be back. But they have a lot of questions to answer this offseason, right? I mean, like they're hard into that second apron, and they've got
Yes.
an ownership group that is at each other's throats. Let me read this to you. I know that you saw it because it was in the group chat, but I'm going to read it for the group. So John Krasinski from The Athletic reported this, that quote, on multiple occasions earlier in these playoffs, Glenn Taylor tried to approach Mark Lore and Alex Rodriguez, the other warring side of this ownership battle, to greet them either before or during games. Team and arena sources who witnessed the interactions told The Athletic. Taylor even tried to hug Rodriguez at one point, only to be rebuffed. This is not going well there.
No hugs for you. So in a vacuum, I would root for the would-be new ownership group to win this battle. Not that I'm a lawyer and I don't know how the legalese will go. Do you have a guess on who you think will spend the most money? Because there's reporting out there that the A-Rod group won't. There's history that suggests the Taylor group hasn't and therefore won't. Because I just want whoever's going to spend the most money and invest in whatever this needs to look like to continue. And I wanted your take on this. I do think their lack of experience caught up to them, which is weird because they beat Denver, but their fourth quarter execution wasn't great. I mean, Cat had one really good quarter in the game they won. And I love Ant, but he wasn't at this nearly the same level. And that was true a little bit at the end of the Denver series too. To your point, sometimes you need time. The future's bright if you pay for it. I think the losing and all the playoff experience builds a great foundation. I just don't know if the Timberwolves are willing to pay for it going forward.
The future is bright if you pay for it. That is my point. And that's what I worry a little bit about with the Wolves, because they are so deep into that second apron for next season, because the new Ant money kicks in, the Cap money kicks in. You know, you already paid, Rudy's got his contract. And I mean, Jaden McDaniels is a bargain by comparison, but we were talking about this earlier in the year, where if they don't want to pay that money, like, because you're right, Glenn Taylor historically has been notoriously cheap, always reluctant to pay the tax. And these new guys, who knows if they have the money or are willing to invest it, at which point, like, if you're a Wolves fan, you got to be a little bit worried about whether or not they're going to keep this core together and they're willing to stay in that second apron, or if all of a sudden they look around and go, I don't know, maybe we need to like unplug Cat and turn him into several pieces instead of one.
I don't hate that, by the way. It depends, because if they're not going to go into the second apron, if they're not going to spend a bunch of money, well, they're not. That's it. You can try. There's a happy medium, right? You don't have to be the Marlins in baseball and just tear the whole thing down. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm still not overly impressed by Cat. He was really good at times, including defensively. And I know he offers a lot of different things. And what was he? Did he hit 3 or 4 3-point shots in that game 4 that they won that were really, really big? I think there's a world where you could. I know that New Orleans is interested. There's other places where you might be able to get less expensive options and invest in some of the other guys on that roster and build around Ant in a different way.
Like, from an academic standpoint, I think it's crazy, because I think you've gotten proof of concept this season that this core works. But what you were saying about closing games is right. And I think that's less an experience issue than it is just sort of a roster construction issue, because what this team does extremely well is not necessarily finding offense when you need it late in games. In fact, it isn't. Like, that's not their, like, you know, they were what, middle
it
of
wasn't all year.
Yeah, they were
17th.
like, I think they were 17, in offense. And they didn't really need to, because they were so good defensively. They suffocate you in so many different ways that, you know, they'll outscore you just by like omission, right? I mean, like, they're just out there like attrition. And then, you know, you get into the playoffs and you're like, oh, these things are super tight in these games against the Mavs, when the Mavs have two guys who can close against you. And you're like, oh, we really need Ant to be that guy, but I'm not sure he's that guy yet. And hey, maybe Cat can do it in one game, but he's not really consistent enough to do it in every game. So I think that they do kind of need another somebody who can score and really help close. But I don't know how you do that. And I also don't know, as you mentioned, whether or not they're willing to pay for it. So if I think it would be madness for them to unplug Cat, but it wouldn't surprise me if that's the solution they come up with, because they're so into that second apron.
Let me gently push back on that a little on your view. Because yes, proof of concept, but also proof of concept, they were pretty good without him. I think it was 14-6.
Oh yeah, Nas is amazing. Yeah.
I mean, Naz Reid stepped in and was outstanding. Anthony Edwards, right, chicken and the egg. Maybe he went to another level because he needed to, because Cat wasn't there. Maybe he doesn't need Cat out there to be outstanding. Maybe they can be, and they were pretty good offensively when Cat was gone. So it seems counterintuitive because of how naturally talented they were, but they were really, really good when Cat was hurt this year in the regular season.
What do you think you could turn Cat into?
I don't know. I mean, because the thing is, you want to make it really affordable, right? Like you
need to chop him into multiple pieces.
A couple 3-and-D guys, or maybe like one sort of medium offensive spark plug and some draft. The thing is, I think draft picks are more valuable than they were in past years, and I'm not sure if we've all as talkers caught up with this, because those guys are going to be affordable for a while. If you draft properly and you find guys that can contribute, the cap's going to matter now, right? It's not the National Football League, but like to a degree, like in the NFL, if you have a quarterback that is on his rookie deal, it's easier to build a winner. And once you got to pay your quarterback, you got to move on from somebody else. So I might go with some draft picks, and I haven't even thought about it. I know that New Orleans is interested, and hell, a lot of people will be interested in Karl-Anthony Towns.
Yeah, if they should be. I just think it would be such a bummer if you're a Wolves fan where, like they make it to the Western Conference Finals. They were good all season long. You're super excited about this team. And then there's this ownership battle and like they cry poverty afterwards and chop it up into parts. That would suck. If I'm a Wolves fan, that would suck. Real quick before we take a break, and then I have a whole bunch of questions I want to run past you for the finals. Where do you think they fall next season, assuming that they keep this core together?
Great question.
So loaded.
Denver's going to be near the top. I'll buy Dallas, right? This isn't just getting hot in the postseason. They've been, as you know, good for going back to February.
Can they be top 4 next year? I guess is the question.
Thunder.
You're going to slot in the Nuggets. You're going to slot in the Thunder probably. The Mavs are right there.
Thunder could also upgrade. They could add some, they have room. I mean, not the Clippers, especially if PG leaves, not the Lakers. Who am I forgetting? Yeah. Top 4, sure. Might be 4th.
Right?
Might be 4th.
Keep them around. Our producer Aaron is wondering if you would do Cat and Brandon Ingram, or Cat for Brandon Ingram and Philly.
I thought about Ingram.
I like him fine.
Right.
But like the Sixers have been like one of the fallback plans that has been mentioned over and over and over for the Sixers is Brandon Ingram. I think he's like a slightly better Tobias Harris. Like,
I think
he's fine.
I mean, dude, if you call anybody a Tobias Harris, that is an insult.
I know it is. He's the platonic ideal of what Tobias Harris should have been, but never was. Like he's a guy who's going to score. He's limited defensively.
Right. So Conley, Ant, Ingram, McDaniels, Gobert. And you got Naz Reid off the bench.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know. I'd rather, and I can't think of any names. I'd rather find some guys that offer maybe a little bit less offense and a little more defense. And I don't need as big a name. And I think you're going to get a lot for Cat. You also, it'd be nice to replenish some of those first round picks that you gave away for Gobert. So there's a world where I think you could actually get a lesser return that doesn't damage you in terms of what the Wolves can do now, but replenishes some of those picks because you're also going to want to be able to sustain this through draft picks in the years ahead. If you really think this is something that is if the window is long, I think draft picks have some value too.
Godspeed to all of our friends in Minnesota and Wolves fans everywhere. It was a good season, a tough end, but it was a very good season. They definitely, I think, achieved more than most people would have otherwise anticipated. All right, we're going to take a quick break. And then on the other side, we're going to get into Mavs versus Celtics. That's coming up on Beyond the Arc.
We're finally back racing in Shanghai. Complex sequences and chicane with fast runs ready for overtake. Shanghai, it's on.
Welcome back to Beyond the Arc. John and Bill hanging out on a Friday. Find us wherever you get your favorite podcast. Please download, subscribe, leave us a review as well. It helps people find us. All right, finals are set. Mavs and Celtics. Celtics, not surprisingly, a pretty heavy favorite here, Bill. -210. That actually went down. It opened it bigger. Mavs +175. And the CBS Sports predictive model, Celtics as a favorite at 75%.
I saw that.
Wild.
I mean, look, I know you love this predictive model.
I think it's off here.
It misses. Well, it is off sometimes. I mean,
it was really good in the first round. It nailed all 8. But
yeah,
this one, I mean, this one I'm shocked. It also hit
Well,
on
actually,
Wolves against Nuggets. It predicted that one as well, but this one is so heavy.
here's why I think it's actually not shocking, but my reaction is the same as yours. If you look at the numbers, if you study this thing on paper, if you have a really good computer equation algorithm, the Celtics are better. But there is something about what is Tatum going to do in these sort of big moments, and I already know what Luka and Kyrie Irving are going to do. All they do is close. There is something to be said about, okay, maybe the Celtics just romp whoever they play, and it's not their fault they played lesser competition with guys injured, but they did, whereas Dallas got challenged. It's easy to forget that the Clippers have the same level of desperation that Dallas had in that opening round series. That's a point you kept making, which is true. They'd all kind of gone all in, and I know Kawhi's injury, but still, like, that was felt like a coin toss series at the time. Then you play the number 1 seed, and then you play this Wolves team that was red hot. The eye test, not what's on paper, to me makes it much closer. And I think
so
Boston's
too.
hard to gauge. I still don't know what they are.
There's a couple of things on either side that could be, like the Celtics have home court advantage. I do think that matters. But the Mavs, we've discussed it quite a bit, but I think it's important. Everybody is saying that the Celtics had a pretty easy path here. On the other side, the Mavs have had an insanely difficult Bill. They're about to face their 3rd straight top 5 defense.
Yeah.
They just beat 2 of them in a row. I mean, like, that's an unbelievably difficult path. And they cut through to Oklahoma City and the Wolves in pretty impressive fashion. And now here come the Celtics.
Is that fair? Is with ease fair? It feels like it was with ease for Luka and Kyrie.
I don't know with ease. I mean, I think that, like, again, the Wolves series was tougher than the 4-1 finish would otherwise imply.
Right, but they won 4 and 5.
Yeah, I mean, they won them, and that's what I'm saying. Right. Like, those 2 defenses, the Thunder and the Wolves, are legitimate defenses, and the Mavs beat them. I mean, like, they're in the finals for a reason, and now, like, here come the Celtics, and I'm like, well, all right, Celtics
doesn't it feel like Boston's defense
of
matches up better, though? Like, Boston will switch everything, and so it's like, Porzingis, are you like me? I'm assuming you're presuming Porzingis will be out there and will be able to play 25 minutes or 30 effective minutes at least. I think that's important.
Yeah. It is, but even absent Porzingis being available / fully healthy and fully Kristaps Porzingis, I think you're right that the Celtics match up better because, all right, you're going to probably throw Drew Holiday at Luka and then Derek White at Kyrie, right? And then you still have Jalen and Jason to apply to much lesser offensive players. And by the time you get to the center position, you look pretty good defensively from the Celtics perspective.
Avery thought it was going to be, because I was on HQ with Avery Johnson last night, our colleague, and obviously former coach of the year. He thought it was going to be Holiday and Derek against, sort of going back and forth against Kyrie. And the problem becomes
put Jason on
like, but
the bigger
obviously
body.
Like maybe, and we'll see how the matchups work and if they're hunting certain guys or if they're certain. But like the problem is you can't. And here's the other thing that Avery said that I think is worth saying. And I'm not trying to disrespect Kyrie with this sort of lack of the same sort of thing, but you can't stop. Avery's point is you can't stop Luka Doncic. You can't. And I would offer the only person that stopped Luka is Luka, because he'll have these inefficient nights that in the past might catch up to him. But now he's got Kyrie next to him if he gets tired or it just goes a little inefficient. And he's got this defense. So if Boston can't do it, nobody can do it. But I like the way Dallas sort of looks on paper, or the eye test against these guys, as good as the Celtics are.
I think the paper component is where I like. Dallas has been playing so well. They just went through 2 teams that I was really high on. And I think momentum matters, and like they know who they are and how they want to play. And Luka is playing out of his absolute brain. The paper component, though, when I look at the Celtics and what you were talking about like they can't hunt, the Mavs can't hunt matchups. There aren't any matchups to hunt. You're switching everything 1 through 4, and then depending on what happens with Kristaps, maybe 1 through 5. But 1 through 4, you're in a lot of trouble. Luka is sort of defender matchup proof, fine. But yes, like you're going to need more than just Luka and Kyrie against these guys. And I just wonder if they'll be able.
PJ Washington cooled off a little bit.
Yeah, he
Washington,
did.
And that happens, right? But these teams I think are really evenly matched, and things are going to matter in the margins. So like on paper, it's Boston. There's something about Dallas that
I know. I want it to be something about Dallas because they've also been a fun storyline. And I would, and there's so many storylines here, but just seeing Luka's ascension, how he pairs with Kyrie going back to Boston.
Oh, that's such a great.
It's a great storyline.
The hate. He can't avoid it. He can't. Oh, my hamstring it. I mean, you got to go to Boston. That's how
you got to go to Boston. I mean, I was just rewatching the video of, when he was talking about having his number 11 jersey retired in Boston and how he was going to re-sign with the Celtics the following season. And he wanted to retire there and all this stuff. And then it was like, oh, I'm leaving for Brooklyn, by the way. I'll see you guys around. I mean,
Amazing.
What reception in game one is going to be
I can't
outrageous.
wait. I'm going to be there too. I am. Look, like, full disclosure, first world problems. I know it's obnoxious. I've covered so many of these things that I don't usually get that. Like, I like the games, but I'm not usually that excited because it's just another finals game. I am I didn't even realize how excited I was to be in the building on next Thursday when Kyrie is playing Boston until last night at HQ. They played, is what you watched too. They played we do these 2-minute sort of mini features before you and I will do our hits. They played a feature with Kyrie giving the bird to the fans and saying, I'm going to resign, and then saying, I'll do what I want or what. I cannot wait to be there and just feel the emotional anger. It's going to be, and by the way, I don't know how Kyrie's going to respond, but you made this point. I think be careful, Boston, because Luka's a loyal dude. And I don't know if Kyrie's going to take it well or not. We'll see, whatever. Luka might score 30 in the first quarter just based on how you treat Kyrie at warmups. Can't wait.
Yeah. I mean, that's going to be great. And then, like, to a lesser extent, you also have Kristaps Porzingis in Dallas. I mean, that never really fit. Like, he was supposed to be the 1A for Luka. And it just, like, the style of play, they wanted him to get out of the paint. They wanted him to shoot more threes. It just never really worked. And now, for him in Boston, he's not the 1A. He's like the 4th or 5th guy on some nights. And he seems to be okay with that. But, like, that's where it goes back to what you were saying about just, like, the depth for Boston. I mean, when you have Kristaps Porzingis as your, 4th or 5th guy on some nights, you're doing pretty well, especially because now Al Horford, who, despite Aaron jinxing him into a good game, most of the postseason has not played particularly well and has been.
That's a defensive liability.
But if you're only using him for 20 minutes, 25 minutes, you're fine, as opposed to playing him 35.
And to your point about depth, you and I are having this talk. Like, maybe Porzingis will play. Probably he'll play. It's significant, but it's not. If there was a question about whether Kyrie was going to play, right, that would lead the podcast. That'd be what would all we would talk.
Mm-hmm.
Even if Porzingis, he's going to play, but even if he couldn't or he gets hurt again, no one's saying, there go the Celtics. They're done. That's how deep they are. He's a significant piece, and even if he doesn't play, they're still in this series. Whereas, like, if you took Derek Lively out of the entire series, I think that would be really significant for Dallas.
Yeah, it would be a huge blow. Top line talent. Who has the best 2 guys?
Oh, I think it's easily Dallas.
Yeah, I think so too.
I don't even think it's
the only reason I think it is kind of a question is because you have to account for defense. And the other 2 guys, I mean, despite that Luka and Kyrie are trying, and the Kyrie has actually been pretty good in the postseason, the other 2 guys are good defenders.
Here's the thing. It's a great point. If we were having an in a vacuum conversation, I think that really narrows. But they play for the Dallas Mavericks, whose defense is great. And to your point, so I think whatever sort of defensive advantage it gives the Celtics is negated by how Dallas plays and how Kyrie and Luka play with that defense.
A couple other things I wanted to run past you. The coaching matchup is interesting to me. So you have Jason Kidd, who's looking to become the 8th person to win a title as both a player and a coach. That would be a very impressive feat. And then you have Joe Mazzulla, who is looking to be the youngest head coach to win a title since Bill Russell. He's 35. Bill was also 35 at the time as a player coach. Did you see what? The Celtics have been off for a while. Did you see what Joe Mazzulla said about what they're doing with their time?
Tell the audience.
For people who didn't see this. So Joe Mazzulla was asked about what they're doing with their time off. And Joe Mazzulla, as we've mentioned on this pod, and a lot of people probably know, is a very interesting dude. He's been known, he said, to just like rewatch The Town 4 or 5 times a week. He sits with his back to a wall so he can watch people entering restaurants. He doesn't go into revolving doors because he's afraid that, like, I don't know, there might be a hit or something.
The Godfather scene. Yeah. Same for our producer, though.
I know.
Not the revolving door, but the restaurant. Yeah.
It's absurd. Anyway, he said that he was asked, "Hey, how are you using your time?" And he said, "We are weaponizing our time right now." I don't know what that means.
All right, let me ask you this question. You're nicer on these commentaries than I am, but I'm going to ask you: is he more arrogant or is he more weird?
I think weird.
You think it's weird because it comes off off-putting sometimes.
I just think he's and weird might not even be the right word. It might be something like quirky.
I like weird though. Yeah. Okay. Sure.
Like he's got like some idiosyncrasies that I think that are unique.
Are you convinced he's a great coach? Because I'm more certain on him than I am Boston.
I'm not.
I'm not either.
But I am fascinated to see those two match up and like what kind of adjustments are made during the series and all this stuff. We're going to take another break, and then I have a whole host of other questions that I want to run past you about the finals. We're excited about it starting on Thursday. You're listening to Beyond the Arc. We'll be right back.
The UEFA Champions League final. This is as big as it gets. This is the final round. The kings of the Champions League. They are Real Madrid. This is the battleground. Dortmund are into the Champions League final. I can't believe it. We can't believe it. Ain't gonna stop me now. This is the final round. All his dreams coming true.
Dortmund versus Real Madrid in the UEFA Champions League final. Streaming live on Paramount Plus.
Welcome back to Beyond the Arc. John and Bill hanging out on Friday. We just had a promo there for the Champions League final. You're a big soccer guy, Bill. Are you excited for the Champions League final this weekend?
Only if Dortmund beats the living bleep out of Real Madrid. I'm wearing a Barcelona shirt as I tend to. So no, because I feel like Real Madrid's going to be down 2-0 and then score 3 goals in the starting the 87th minute. And I'm going to pull my hair out. Are you?
How weird? See, I am because I love soccer, but it's just been such a weird season for Dortmund. So for them to get into the finals when their domestic campaign was not great is kind of wild.
Them on the
yeah. It's like the Kyrie Irving of soccer. It's very interesting. I wanted to run past you the rest and rust thing because we talked about the Celtics spin. They'll have 9 days between games, between the last Eastern Conference Finals game and the first Finals game that begins on Thursday, as we mentioned, in Boston. And some people are like, oh, how might that impact you? You haven't been playing for a while. Now, you'll remember that 2 years ago, they didn't have much time off, and they ended up losing to the Golden State Warriors. And Al Horford was actually asked about this after the Eastern Conference Finals, and he had an interesting take on it being different this time around.
I mean, I think, the first final was very, very challenging. If you look at our route, that first round series against Brooklyn, it was a hard-fought series, even though that we swept them. And then 7-game series against Milwaukee, the champs, took them to the limit. And then right away, 7-game series against Miami, literally 2-3 days off, having to play Golden State in the final. So it was a lot for our group. It was very overwhelming. And I felt like we were trying to catch on the whole time there. And now, we've put ourselves in a position in the regular season to have home court advantage, to be in this position. And with these series, we're taking advantage of the opportunities and playing them out the right way. So I feel like we're, more mature, obviously, and we're in a better place.
I think he makes a good point.
Yeah.
A little bit of extra time.
I mean, that's where I come down. I don't think that the rust thing is that significant. And if it were, I think if we're on the same page, and if I were going to be more gracious to someone who sort of views this as a significant issue, it might be if the team was younger and didn't have a lot of postseason experience and had never been through something like this. And the Boston Celtics played in that finals a couple of years ago, have played in multiple conference finals. I just think they're going to be fine. And really, even Dallas, I mean, Kyrie Irving has won an NBA championship. I know Luka hasn't been there, but he's been in the conference finals. I think they'll take the rest. We've seen so many guys get hurt, so many guys get broken down for whatever reason this season. I don't like having 6 days off. I think it's stupid, but I would welcome it if I played for either team. It's stupid.
It for us both from a show perspective and then just like consumers of the NBA as entertainment, it's
Right.
stupid. But if I were them and I was like, I get a little break here, this is awesome because basketball is hard and it takes a lot out of me physically and mentally and emotionally. And you're traveling around and
Right.
like it's just the playoffs are a lot, even when I was traveling for every series as a reporter in the playoffs. Like you get
Oh,
back and you're like, man, I'm tired. Like I need a timeout. And that's just this like somebody who's talking or writing for a living, let alone like running up and down the court
yeah.
for 40 something minutes. It's a lot.
That's why I always laugh when you say that you want the series to extend. It just you're a
I like
Wire fan.
this.
It shows that you and I are more house cats now, right? Because
Yeah.
because you ask any beat writer, and it's true when I was one, I'm sure whoever won the first game of every series, I was the biggest fan of that team in the history of
Yeah.
basketball. All I wanted was for that team. I mean, I can remember, and I've told you this, but I can remember covering that Cleveland Cavaliers 2016 series at 3-1, and I had been on the road, and the 73 win thing had made it and no one cares. No one feels bad for us. We get to go to games for a living.
No, nobody does.
I just want to go home, man, and just
Want to go
LeBron,
home.
Draymond, why? So yeah, I totally hear that. But
I
you're
mean,
right. Like it's
when you're on location, yes. When we're, right now, and it might change, but for right now, we're doing it from our places in LA. And it's like I would like some more basketball. But yes, in 2019, when it was the Raptors and the Warriors, and you had to also fly like into Canada with your passport or whatever,
right.
that game 5, when I was like, if there's a game 6 and we have to go back to Canada, I'm going to lose because we're in Oakland.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I just want to come back to LA, which is a much shorter flight than flying all the way back to Toronto and then coming all the way back to, who knows where. I was like, thank you so much, Toronto Raptors.
And every time I would leave Toronto, I would forget that customs is on the front end every time. So I would get there and then they're like, why is there a 2-hour wait oh, that's right. I have to go into America. Although Toronto's a cool city. I do like
Toronto's
Toronto.
a very cool city. It's an underrated city. So let me ask, so you're going to be covering part of the finals on the road here. I lived in both Dallas and Boston for a time as a younger man. I've spent 4 years in both cities.
Okay.
How do you feel about those cities?
So I really want to go to Dallas because my oldest college friend is there, but I will be in Stanford instead at our operations. So I feel great about Dallas, but I won't be there. But how do I feel about Boston? Again, this is a spoiled sports writer's answer. I used to love Boston. There's a restaurant I really like in the North End that you can go in there at 11:59 p.m. and they will serve you. I think it's called Luka. They will serve you pretty good meal and you can get a cocktail and some wine. I don't just like Boston. I have spent so much of my life in Boston in the last 12 years. I was really excited about the idea of going somewhere different. Even Indy. Like I like Boston. I was in Boston 2 years ago. I've been to Boston for conference finals nonstop. Going all the way back to I was in Boston all the time when I covered the Heat because Boston was good when the Heat were good with the LeBron years. So I'm over Boston, bro. I mean, I know it's a cool. Do you like going to Boston? Like I'm over Boston.
I actually really do like going to Boston. I think it's an underrated city. It has just, especially in the spring when it's not just like
that's true
inundated with snow and it looks like the ice planet from Star Wars Hoth. Like in the spring, it shines. It's a beautiful city architecturally.
It is.
And it also has some unbelievable restaurants.
It does.
So that part I really like going to Boston. But one of the things I like about going to Boston is then afterwards I get to leave Boston. So that part is really great too. Because living there was less exciting because it's like 9 months, 10 months of winter, and then you get like
I've never lived there.
And then it's just real hot, and then it's cold again.
I think part of my issue with Boston is Lori and I have spent a lot of time vacationing in Boston. This is so spoiled. And we've taken our kids to Boston. So I like it. I just want to, because it's so compact, which is great. It's so easy to get around where the TD Garden is versus wherever my hotel is going to be, where the North End, you can just walk. By the way, I've never been to a Red Sox game in my life.
Really?
Maybe I'll get it off the bucket list.
You should see if they're around and if you can fit it in. Fenway is very cool. The seats are made for, like early 20th century human beings. So
Okay.
if you're over like 5, 6.5,
Right.
you're not going to fit comfortably into one of those seats,
But
but
I'll feel
it's a
tall
cool, you will
for the
feel
first
extremely
time.
tall. The
Oh,
seats
I'm
are
in.
unbelievably uncomfortable and small, but
Are they
it's a,
sounds like
yeah,
Wrigley. All right.
it's ridiculous. Last one for you, I guess, and then we'll wrap it up and head into our weekend. Last night inside the NBA season finale of that program. We're going to get another year next year, but then that looks like it's probably going to be it.
Yeah.
This is a bummer. I hope they figure it out.
And I love Chuck. Did you read the New York Times story? Chuck is going on
I did.
basically a mission of this is a bunch of crap, and not all of his colleagues want to be talking to the media. And then he went on our Jim. I guess Jim Rome's not really CBS Sports Radio anymore, but whatever. He went on Jim Rome, and yeah, it's over because Barkley is obviously making it very clear that it's over. I guess a farewell tour makes it a little easier to say goodbye next year, right? Do you like farewell tours?
Yeah. I do. I was in Philly when Kobe started his farewell tour, and it was like quite a ceremony. Like it, you know,
Right.
like the whole city turned out to say goodbye. And then he like had a whole season of it afterwards, like where
Right.
every place that he went, everybody said goodbye to Kobe. Yeah, I guess it would help a little bit. It's certainly next season. Like I think I personally took it for granted because we watched so much basketball, and after the games were over on TNT, it's just sort of on. And I would be like, whether I was doing this show or working somewhere else, I would just always have it on, but maybe not give it as much attention as I certainly will next season. Next season, I'll be like really invested.
And there's some reporting out there, and Puck News they do some real reporting on media. They get stuff right a lot. There's some reporting out there that they're not going to keep the show together. And I don't know if you saw this. It was yesterday. There's reporting that basically Kenny may not have a market, that they may not, whoever has the rights may not want to bring Kenny over. It may just be Shaq and Chuck and then some other younger person, which I hate. But already you're seeing sort of speculation from media executives at the various companies that, you know, if they keep it together, it may not be the same show, which is to say not the same show.
It's crazy. I like, this is when executives get in their own way.
Yeah.
This show works. It's so good. It's one of the most entertaining things, not just in sports media, but full stop, that you can find on television or streaming after a game at 1 a.m. These guys are just doing ridiculous stuff. The chemistry works. I don't understand why they'd want to unplug Kenny.
So I don't either. So it makes me, George R.R. Martin, who wrote Game of Thrones, just made this comment about how all these Hollywood execs don't use the source material. They think their twist. And whether you're a Bridgerton fan, or what my wife is, or a Shogun fan, or any of these shows, like once you start to go off, I think it's the same sort of ego where some TV executive is like, oh, I'll put my stamp on it. It is incredibly stupid. Incredibly stupid. If it's
somebody keep them together. We need it. I need it in my life.
The crew, if you can hire, I would try to keep every aspect. Rent the space from Turner if you can. Don't change anything.
Well, fingers crossed for those guys. It was a bummer, but last night was nice to see them sort of heading into the off season together. But one more year. All right, that's going to do it for us today. We're going to be back at it on Monday, I believe. I think Ashley might join us. I'm not sure. We're going to figure it all out. It's all up in the air. We're going to figure it out. But for now, for our NBA insider Bill Ryder, I am John Gonzalez. Thank you everybody for tuning in, and have an excellent weekend.